Hello world, I'm your shorter than average girl from down under, and Po's back! I lived and breathed Kung Fu Panda when it came out originally in 2010, and I love the sequels as well. Two more than three. But when I heard that Kung Fu Panda 4 was coming out, I was like, look, DreamWorks doesn't have the best track record when it comes to sequels, but as long as it's not Shrek 4, I'll give it a go. So, before Kung Fu Panda 4 comes out to cinemas this March, let's go back in the ages to where this all began with Kung Fu Panda 1. And don't worry, in the next few weeks we'll also have videos for Kung Fu Panda 2 and 3 out on this channel. But if you're only here for the movie reviews, please click on the timestamp shown on the screen right now or the one in the description, whichever suits you best. But for now, let's talk story. So Kung Fu Panda is set in China, but instead of people, you've got anthropomorphic animals and cue our main character, Po, the equivalent of a die-hard anime fan or a Swiftie of the Kung Fu Panda universe. He is versed to the teeth in Kung Fu history, lore, and theory, and is absolutely obsessed with all the Kung Fu celebrities. So, when it was announced that the Dragon Warrior, a mythical status in Kung Fu, was going to be selected, you can bet your 2 cents that Po was going to have a front row ticket. Now, before we get too far ahead into the plot, we've got to mention the hierarchy of the Jade Palace. So you have Master Oogway, who is the maker or creator of Kung Fu, and he has prophetic visions and, all-encompassing wisdom, the whole works. And then Oogway's pupil is Master Shifu, a Kung Fu prodigy, but still in the stage of learning when it comes to the deeper philosophies of Kung Fu. Then you've got the Furious Five, these hand-selected fighters tasked with protecting the Valley of Peace. Now you've got Tigress, Monkey, Crane, Viper, and Mantis, all selected by Master Shifu Oogway due to their special talents and trained by Shifu in the ways of Kung Fu. So the Furious Five answer to Shifu, who answers to Oogway. So when Oogway had a vision that Tai Lon, one of Shifu's ex-pupils that had gone to the dark side,
"You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them! Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness! I hate you! I loved you!"
was going to break out of Chargon prison, which is all the way in Mongolia, and Chargon literally means sitting in prison in Cantonese, reflecting what Tai Lon had been doing for the last 20 years. Anyway, Shifu had an absolute panic attack and sent Zheng to reinforce the defenses in Chargon. But Oogway suggests that they should select an individual to take on the title and the responsibilities of that of the Dragon Warrior. Now, at this point, we have no idea what the mythical role of the Dragon Warrior is, and so we have no idea how it's going to stop Tai Lon. We'll get there after 3 movies. But what we do find out through the duration of this film is that Tai Lon has been training for the position of Dragon Warrior his entire life, and he was trained under Shifu. But when Oogway saw that Tai Lon was not fit for the position, he refused to give him the Dragon Scroll.
The Dragon Scroll essentially mentions the secrets of how to become the Dragon Warrior. At least that's what we're told.
And this made Tai Lon go
Rage quit.
and so he started to hurt a whole bunch of people just so that he can get his hands on the scroll. But of course he didn't succeed, and that's how he landed himself in jail. So Oogway wanted to give someone the dragon scroll before Tai Lung can come and take it by force, because he could feel that his time was, coming to an end. And so he needed to make sure that before leaving this world, he had given the dragon scroll to the right person, not Tai Lung. And who happened to be selected for this task? Shifu? No. One of the Furious Five? No. It's our die-hard fan Po. Now, everyone except for Po himself, Shifu, and the Furious Five were ecstatic about this news. They trusted Oogway, and so when he said that, Po was going to be this legendary Kung Fu warrior, then who are they to say no to that? Po himself was just shocked that he was selected because he doesn't have experience, but at the same time, he wanted to take this opportunity on because it was always his dream to delve into Kung Fu. But as for the others, they were really mean to him, not nice at all. And the reason for that is because they felt like they deserved the title. And so they envied Po because he hadn't really put in the work to get the status of Dragon Warrior, whereas they've been working for it their entire life. For them, at least, it was a very illogical selection to pick Po as the Dragon Warrior when they have all the experience and effort required. Which is interesting because that's kind of like what happened to Tai Long. Shifu trains these warriors up to a standard which he deems worthy of the Dragon Warrior status, and then fueled by their somewhat satisfaction and then drive to make their master proud, then they start to deem themselves worthy for that position as well. But then they don't get it. And when they don't, they get
pretty salty.
not as salty as Tai Long, but still
Salt.
And the reason they probably didn't get as salty as Tai Long is because Shifu didn't really give them the ego boost that he did Tai Long, given that Tai Long was his adopted son as well. What this shows us at the end of the day is one of the key criteria for being a dragon warrior.
You are only worthy when you don't think that you are worthy.
So basically, one must be accepting of their own limitations and flaws, yet continue to have that drive to try and improve themselves. That's a key role of a dragon warrior, and it's a key characteristic Po has himself. He knows he's no Kung Fu anything, but he wants to make his dream of being something in Kung Fu a reality, and so he continues to try and try and try. This ends up becoming the day-to-day routine in the Jade Palace until Shifu gets the news that he feared the most, that Tai Long had escaped. Now, unlike Shifu, the news didn't even waver Master Oogway because he fully believed that Po has the ability to become the Dragon Warrior and therefore able to defeat Tai Long. And this would be the last that we see Oogway in the tangible world. Stricken with the grief of the loss of his mentor and complying with his final wishes, Shifu declares that Po is the one to defeat Tai Long. But no one takes too kindly for those empty words. Not Po, not the Furious Five, I don't even think Shifu himself. And fair enough, he doesn't believe the words coming out of his own mouth, and so no one else does either. And with that, Po tries his best to avert the looming threat of having to face Tai Long, whereas the Furious Five decide to go out, find Tai Long, and defeat him before he makes it to the Valley of Peace. And that goes horribly wrong. Now, it's here where we see Shifu's real genius come through. The reason why he is the Kung Fu teacher. He has an insight to being able to see one's inner potential and use their unique skill set to teach them Kung Fu. And for Po, that was food. Initially, food is Po's greatest weakness, the thing which stops him from being a better version of himself. But Shifu changes the way that Po views food, allowing him to confront his weakness. And so Shifu teaches him to turn it into his greatest strength. And so Po masters all the levels of Kung Fu in just a few days. But then when he tries to read the Dragon Scroll, he finds that it's
Black.
disappointed with the outcome. They all decide to evacuate the Valley of Peace, with Shifu sacrificing himself to face Tai Lon all along. But then the meaning of the Dragon Scroll dawns on Po, and so he makes his way back to the Jade Palace to confront Tai Lon and defeat him. And now that Po has defeated Tai Lon, everyone believed that he is the true Dragon Warrior, and that's the end of part 1. Most of the themes, characters, and concepts of Kung Fu Panda are inspired from Eastern philosophy, so much so that China loved it, and now their scholars are studying these movies till today. But I'm no scholar in Eastern philosophy and not versed enough to explain each of the individual concepts and principles presented in Kung Fu Panda. So instead, what I'll be doing is go through the messages that we can take from this movie, some of which could be concepts from Eastern philosophy but untitled, and some that may not be. I just don't want to attribute particular ideas to a name which can mean more or differently from the way that I'll be presenting it. But without further ado, let's get started. The major discussion in the Kung Fu Panda franchise is the fine line between preordained fate and the personal drive to create one's own path. But unlike most movies where the two are presented as polar opposites, Kung Fu Panda takes the more accurate approach of stating that both are true at the same time. So let's take it a step at a time. Master Oogway had previously known that Po was to be the Dragon Warrior before Po even made the prophecy come true. But at the same time, without Oogway's involvement at all, Po had always dreamed of delving into the arts of Kung Fu. It's as though Po was destined for this path and preparing himself for it all along, but without actually knowing what life had in store for him. And so one may think that something inside Po all along knew his fate and was unconsciously preparing him for the day that his fate would come true. But at the same time, Po wasn't predetermining his life's goal and pushing himself into Kung Fu before the opportunity presented itself to him. Now, Master Oogway explains this concept beautifully with the analogy of a peach seed.
Ah, yes. But no matter what you do, that seed will grow to be a peach tree. You may wish for an apple or an orange,
but you
will get a peach.
But a peach cannot defeat Tai Lung.
Maybe it can, if you are willing to guide it, to nurture it, to believe in it.
So essentially, each being is born with a certain potential, one that is unique to it and only has a single outcome when fully actualized. Now, for the divine, or from nature's point of view, producing beings that are not completely identical is crucial for everything to work together. Because as soon as you have two things that are the same, they become redundant in purpose, and so they will fight until only one of them comes out victorious, because nature only needs one. Everything on this earth is different and has its own divine purpose assigned to each in their potential. This potential becomes you, the unconscious and conscious guide, which allows you to fulfill your purpose. However, the way that you do it is entirely your choice. So it's not something forced upon you by a divine being, but it's who we are. It's our DNA, our initial sense of morality, it's our curiosity, our drive. It's what makes us excited when we're kids and what eventually determines our interest and hobbies when we grow up. But there are things that can stand in the way from us listening to our potential. Things like societal or family expectations, not processing experiences in our life properly, or temptation. These aren't wrong as per se, but when we are given an opportunity to follow the natural course of things and fulfill our potential, but then choose to ignore it so that we can focus on others or things as needs and wants from us, we risk dwindling our potential. And do that enough, and you're as good as have killed it. And we see this through the arc of Po versus all his opponents throughout the three movies. In the first movie, we see Po persisting in learning about Kung Fu as a passion, while still helping his father in the noodle shop. But when it was announced that the Dragon Warrior will be revealed, he picked to leave the noodle cart behind so that he can see this one-of-a-lifetime event. Now, would Oogway have picked someone else if Po wasn't there? Probably not. So it wouldn't have changed the outcome if Po had decided to stay near the noodle cart, but it would have delayed it. Poe's push by his potential towards his destiny is what allowed the events to come to be the way that they did. So what Kung Fu Panda teaches us is that the more aligned that we are with our potential, which is the natural course of things, the more fulfilled we get. Don't be lazy about chasing your potential. But is acting too quickly good? Now, this is another point discussed by these movies. You don't know your destiny until it presents itself to you. So don't act in haste because it's not in your control, and destiny will still come to fruition. And this is Shifu's biggest problem. He thinks that he knows the worth of each individual and so trains them accordingly, aka he sets goals for them. He wanted to control fate. When he told Tai Long that he had the potential to be the Dragon Warrior, Tai Long long forgot what his actual potential was telling him and instead followed the one that Shifu had assigned him to, not the universe. And so when the false pretenses never came to be, Tai Lon was lost because the voice of his potential had been silenced for so long that he could no longer hear it. Or worse, it could have died. And so this is why he turns on everybody and tries desperately to take the scroll by force. He no longer knew what his purpose was other than to be the Dragon Warrior, and so he desperately needed that scroll to make it true. And the same applies for the five. However, they aren't as far gone as Tai Long was because Shifu didn't cox them as much. And so at the end of the movie, the voice of their potential came back, and so they accepted that they no longer needed to compete for the position of Dragon Warrior, and instead they each have a unique Kung Fu talent to master, use for good by protecting the Valley of Peace, and to teach to others. As for Shifu himself, the control he desperately wanted was driving his soul mad. He was unable to find inner peace. As soon as he accepted to let go of that illusion of control and to go with the flow of the universe, did he then find inner peace? But what exactly does it mean to go with the flow? And cue another lesson from Kung Fu Panda.
Quit, don't quit. Noodles, don't noodles. You are too concerned with what was and what will be. There's a saying. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why it is called the present.
Everything in the universe only exists unanimously in the present. In the past, there are things that have long gone in the present and others that haven't yet come. Whereas in the future, there are things that aren't there. In the past, we recall things that are now no longer true because they have changed. Or we worry about choices that we've made and wish that we could change them. Our reluctance for good things to become different, as well as our need to fix the bad things, comes from our need to control what is happening to us. And our inability to do so may lead us to making decisions in the now which aren't for our potential's benefit, but for the sake of preserving something that only existed in the past and now in our mind. Shifu's reluctance to fight Tai Long when he became bad is just the prime example of this. Another thing that thinking about the past can do is lead to depression, as we feel helpless without being able to control what has happened. On the contrary, thinking about the future makes us ignore our current self because it is a smaller, unevolved version of what we want to see ourselves in the future. This lack of compassion for our current state of self will have obvious effects on our performance in the now, and so we start to loathe it and tell ourselves, oh, you're not trying hard enough at being that person that we want to be in the future. This is a trait that we see strongest in tigers. In addition, thinking and planning for the future can lead to anxiety. If one doesn't see themselves achieving the necessary milestones that they need to be achieving in the now to reach that place that they want to reach in the future. Don't get me wrong, having goals and aspirations is very good and important, but not having the flexibility to go with it or the acceptance that it isn't in your control can only ever lead to the negative spiral of thought, which becomes anxiety. The only way to understand yourself, your path, and your place in the universe is by looking at the present, accepting your flaws so that you can work on them, and being prepared for the opportunity which will put you on the trajectory to achieving your purpose. And at the heart of this all, you need to believe in your potential. Listen to it, follow it, and accept your shortcomings. That is the true message embedded in the fabric of the Dragon Scroll, and only a person who lives in the present will ever be able to see this. That's why both Tai Lon or Shifu couldn't, because both were still living in their own past and worrying about the future. And it's always comforting and helpful when there are others who share your belief in your potential and you believe in theirs. So, all in all, Kung Fu Panda is a fantastically rich, humorous, and light story about fulfilling one's own potential by following the divine or natural calling to it. And that the only way that one would be able to achieve this is by preparing themselves and being patient for the opportunities that life would present to us, and by living in the now and accepting one's strengths and weaknesses and working on them rather than skanking away. This movie is definitely a must-see for children. It introduces very positive messages in a very beautifully interactive way. I mean, yes, it may introduce one or two rude gestures, but these can easily be rectified by each child's own moral code, as well as parents if, the child is too young. But still, these minor acts of rudeness or indecency, whatever you call it, does not overshadow the overwhelmingly positive message perpetuated throughout the entire story. So that was 1 out of 3 Kung Fu Panda movies in the No Longer trilogy. Make sure to stay tuned for the reviews of movies 2 and 3 coming up in the next month by subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss out on them. If you want to watch Kung Fu Panda 1 in your own time, please make sure to use a streaming service that that doesn't support the violation of human rights or the spread of negativity in the world. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on Kung Fu Panda 4 coming out? What do you think will happen? Will it add to the story, or is it just going to be another one of those DreamWorks adaptations? So, be brave, be happy, and be kind, and we'll catch you all next time.